Aloha, and welcome back to Pauhana Referee. This week I'll be going over match week 8, which I reviewed the Arsenal versus Bournemouth game that took place on Saturday, and then I also reviewed the Man City versus Wolves game that took place on Sunday morning. So I'll be diving deep into those two this week. There wasn't too many controversial calls outside of those. There was a kind of scuffle and thing in the West Ham game, but nothing really controversial. Everyone seemed kind of same opinion. There was some controversial calls that took place in these games, so that was kind of nice that we'll be able to dive into those calls and kind of just the all around of how the referee did in those games. All right, so the first game that took place on Saturday was Arsenal versus Bournemouth at Bournemouth, and so our referee was Robert Jones. Our assistant referee was Neil Davis and Simon Long. We had our fourth as Tim Robertson, and our VAR Jared Gillett, and assistant VAR Harry Leonard. So yeah, those were our referees for the match. Again, these are all PGMOL referees. And so during the first half, some notes I had was the positioning to make the calls was really good. Our referee was moving around. He was making sure he moved to get into a better position, get the best angle he could to make the calls that he can. I felt he felt very, I'm using this term and you'll hear me use it a bunch through all these, kind of invisible. And what I mean by that is you kind of forget that a referee is there reffing the game. Yeah, you know a call may be made here or there. We got a foul here, a foul there, all that type of stuff. But you don't feel like the referee is putting his own or her own presence onto the game. They're there, they're just making the game run smoothly. And so what I call that is kind of being invisible, not making a spotlight of your own self. Yeah, so again, movement was good and having the best position. The biggest thing that happened in the first half of the Arsenal-Bournemouth game was the Saliba red card that took place in the 30th minute. And this was kind of a controversial call. And actually, it started out as a straight yellow card to Saliba. We had defender kind of almost about to get onto a open field to get to the ball, and we had Saliba kind of pull back on his arm, go behind him and clip him a bit, committing that foul. Tactical foul in some ways, which, again, the attacker for Bournemouth had a clear, direct path towards the ball and possibly going towards goal to score. So, with that means that we had DOGSO. And so what DOGSO means is denial of obvious goal scoring opportunity. And in the last few years, actually DOGSO has been kind of broadened more, or a bit better of a term. Used to be DOGSO, straight red card, no matter what. Now with DOGSO, there is a possibility for yellow card if the foul wasn't serious enough for the red card. So in that scenario, that's what the referee did. Gave the yellow card. That's kind of his safety net. Okay, this was clear. Denial of the obvious goal scoring opportunity, but I don't think that goal scoring opportunity was that obvious. It did take place kind of towards the halfway line of the field. So, we did have him show the yellow card first. Now, the nice part about this is the referee knows he does also have VAR to help him check if he made a clear and obvious mistake, which is the possibility of that should be a red card. And that's actually what happened. He gave the yellow card first, then VAR came in and was like, hey, no, you should actually take a look at this. We got some angles showing that Raya, the Arsenal goalkeeper, is backing up. He's actually not going out towards that ball. There's definitely more of an obvious goal-scoring opportunity here than what most people think. He was the last defender, Saliba, so the red card did come out. The referee went over, watched it, saw the clips, and that took place. I'll be coming back to the Saliba red card after I talk about some stuff that happened in the second half and kind of like what fan reactions are and stuff like that. Again, another Arsenal player getting a red card early in the game, costing them a chance to either get a draw, which it was 0-0 at the time, or get a win, and they are up there for the title contention. Another thing I had in the first half was that with being invisible, you don't, like this, when that took place in the 30th minute, the referee does not want to make that call. He does have to make that call, but he doesn't want to. So kind of, again, you didn't feel like he was putting his presence. Yes, it did happen, but everyone knows that that call was needed to be made. There was maybe some controversy on people saying it should have just stayed as a yellow card, not been upgraded to a red card. On some other points that I'll get into later as well. During the second half, again, the game became a little more chippy. So what was really good about this was the referee kept control of this game and issued out some yellow cards for obvious just delaying of game, kind of, getting into other players' faces, unsportsmanlike conduct, that type of stuff. So obvious yellow cards, but nothing where it was like, oh, whoa, what is that call? He kept control. He made sure he did stay invisible as well during the second half as much as he could. But in those instances, he was like, nope, we need to calm this down. I need to take control here. Here's a yellow card. This is a warning. And that player gets the warning, but it's also a warning for the entire team, being like, hey, watch what you all are doing because I will be giving out cards and I am not taking this type of actions during the game. Again, great positioning for the game. I really loved his path running. So kind of what you like to see is this like snake shape. So if you got like the center circle, you kind of want to stay in a snake like this. Over here will be your AR1 or AR2. Over here is your other assistant referee. This is halfway line. And you kind of just want to be making a snake shape. Now you can always come here and your snake shape can kind of come like this. And it's not a perfect snake shape. But you kind of want that S shape, that snake shape to your path of running. But it always depends on kind of where that ball is. But I always felt like he had a good distance from the ball, not being too close where you're going to interfere with the game, but also being right there. I really liked when the ball got in towards the box, he was right there on the edge of the box. He was always making side shuffles to get a better angle or kind of turning his body. Never felt like there was ever really a time where he wasn't in the right position to not make a call. So he was always in the right position to make a call. Another thing I noticed during the second half, a little more than I saw in the first half, maybe it just went past me, but if you have ever played soccer before, always a drill you do while passing, you gotta check your shoulder. Check your shoulder. See what's happening around you. It probably takes place in other sports as well, but someone that made it super famous and everyone like kind of fell in love with it and really made it a noticed thing that a player was doing it was during the World Cup when Argentina was making their run for the World Cup. This in 2022. And so you saw Messi, who kind of, walks around the pitch and he's always just checking his shoulder, making sure to see all his surroundings. And as a referee, you want to be doing the same thing. you don't want to be stuck on the ball because there might be something happening a little away from the ball. When that ball is played, you kind of watch where that ball is going, but you always get a quick check towards where that ball was kicked because there might be a little late foul there, So you always want to keep your head on a swivel, checking what's going on. And I think Robert did a really good job of this. There wasn't really anything that I was like, ooh, whoa. I think there might be something going on that he wouldn't be aware of. He was, in great positions, running around. Didn't seem like he was walking too much. Didn't seem too hesitant to find a different position, anything like that, and checking his shoulder. And that's what comes with checking your shoulder, is making sure you are in that right position, making sure that you know kind of what's going on. And so yeah, Robert did a great job with that. Another thing that happened was there was a penalty in the second half. I don't remember what minute that took place in, but I think it was a great no card situation. There was a little bit of a defender there. It wasn't completely dog-so, but keeper came out, made himself big. Defender made sure the keeper didn't get a chance to get towards the ball. Keeper came in, clipped not the defender, but the attacker made sure the keeper didn't have a chance to get to the ball. And the keeper clipped the attacker, which committed a foul in the box. Great call. Instant. He was right there, made the call. Great job executing it, and no need for VAR coming in. Easy. No card. It's just a penalty. Move on. Bournemouth did score that, and it was their second goal. So it was nice. Arsenal were on 10 men. So kind of going back to that Saliba red card, making it harder for Arsenal to stay in this game and eventually actually losing the game. So I want to go back to this Saliba red card in the 30th minute. And I have some notes written down here. And so some Arsenal fans, this is what I found on Twitter, on some Reddits. And so Arsenal fans, of course, very vocal. I talked about it in the other episode I made with Declan Rice's red card. And not all of them, but a majority of them were kind of upset with this call. There were some upset that the foul call was even called in general. So there's that. I'll touch on that point about that. There was also a group that were just upset that it was upgraded to a red card, which again I kind of talked about, but I'll kind of go into that a little bit more too. And then there was other fans that might not be Arsenal fans, just Premier League fans, that were upset. But there was also people that were applauding the referee for a good job on this call as well. So we are glad to see that. Now, are those people that are applauding just happy because Arsenal got a player on a red card? Very possibly. And especially Saliba, who's like their golden child defender, getting a red card in this game, which hurts them. Bournemouth, a good team, and actually eventually did win, which Arsenal didn't get any points, so it didn't move up in the table. If anything, they might possibly move down in the table after the whole weekend. And then also Saliba won't be available for next week, which they are playing Liverpool, which is a big game. Again, Liverpool, top of the league right now. And so big game for Arsenal next week, and they're down, and they don't get their star golden child defender Saliba in their center back. So, like I said, going to the Arsenal fans, we got Arsenal fans say unfair. The guy was offside, so how is this a red card? Don't understand how he wasn't offsides. That's kind of claiming towards this foul shouldn't have been called, is being like, well, he was offsides. That's why the foul shouldn't be called. Also, kind of just felt unfair that it was a red card. So going back towards why it was a red card. It was given a yellow card. It would have stayed as a yellow card if found that it really wasn't as big of a direct direct obvious goal scoring opportunity. But with going to VAR, seeing a little bit different angles than where the referee was, which the referee did have a great angle for this, but there's other factors that can be taking place. We see Raya, the goalkeeper, backing up, and the attacker having a free line to go towards that ball. The ball was pretty close to the attacker. I think the attacker would have, even if Raya was going towards the ball, the attacker would have gotten there first. Now, it might have made it harder and a different type of challenge for the attacker to possibly get the goal. But either way, and then we had Ben White on the other side, pretty far away. I don't think Ben White was going to get back in time to either stop the attacker before getting to the goalkeeper to have a one-on-one, or getting in on time to kind of get to that ball before the attacker. So I think that upgrade to the red card was the right decision. And some people do agree with me on that as well. So now going to this offside. Offsides is kind of one of those very easy rules to understand in some ways, but sometimes a hard rule for people to grasp, and even for people that play the game a long time. It's very interesting. It's always one of those rules that there's always tweaks and changes made every year. But this one was clearly not offsides. Now, yes, was the player technically standing in an offsides position based on the wording of an offside position? Yes. He was past the second to last defender, which, if you don't know, the goalkeeper is technically the last defender. But a lot of times we call the last person in the defensive line the last defender. But in the wording, second to last defender would be that farthest back center back or right back or whoever there. So it goes goalkeeper, or touch line, which is, or the goal line. And then it goes goalkeeper, and then the second to last defender, which is normally your last defender in your defensive line. So that was actually Saliba in this case, and our attacker, I think it was Evanson or something, for Bournemouth. I don't fully remember the actual attacker's name, but he was past Saliba. So he was in between the goalkeeper and Saliba, and they were past the halfway line. So he was in an offsides position. And I use this quotations here. I did it underneath the camera, but he was in an offsides position. And what I mean by that is, yes, by definition, he's in the offsides position, but you can't actually call him for offsides in this scenario because the ball was actually played off of an Arsenal winger back that went backwards over the defensive line heading towards. Now, there was a Bournemouth player that was there, but it was clearly kicked off Trossard, who is the left winger for Arsenal, or left midfielder for Arsenal. And so you can't be offsides if it's played or clearly deflected. And that's another stipulation. If it's deflected, you can be offsides, but clearly played by the defender. If it's deflected off a defender that's trying to play the ball, yes, you are considered not offsides. But if it's just deflected off a defender without the defender trying to make a play for that ball, then you're still offsides. But this was clearly Trossard trying to play the ball. It was actually passed from another Arsenal player to Trossard, off his shin, went back over, and it was a clear ball for Ev Wilson, the Bournemouth attacker. We'll just go Bournemouth attacker, to get onto that ball and have a one-on-one, and a direct goal scoring opportunity. So I'll put some images of this as well, if I haven't already put them up. But he was not offsides because of the ball being kicked off of the Arsenal defender, which can't put the Bournemouth attacker in an or flagged for offsides. Yes, he's in an offsides position, but he cannot be flagged for an offsides. And so that was kind of the biggest point that I found Arsenal fans trying to make is like, hey, he's offsides. This can't stand. Like, what is going on? He's offsides. Why is this standing? But as clearly I explained, yeah, he was in an offsides position, but he wasn't offsides. He was actually considered onsides because of how the play happened. I think I saw some Arsenal fans saying it was kicked by a Bournemouth player, but clear in replay, it wasn't. And if that was to happen, this definitely would have been a spot where VAR would have come in and helped Robert Jones make that decision and reverse the yellow card, if anything. But it was clear that that was not how it worked, and so the yellow card was upgraded to a red card. Yeah. Again, overall, I think Robert Jones did an amazing job in this game. I think his linesmen were good. Nothing really there. I think Jared Gillett came in the right way, and what I really liked was in this VAR decision, it was more of the VAR coming in and being like, hey, maybe take a look at this. This might be a red card, we think. And we saw Robert go to the screen and watch, and it was very quick, and watch and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that needs to be upgraded to a red card. And compared to sometimes I find that it seems like VAR is like really trying to make a different change in what the referee was, which is pretty crazy in my eyes. But again, I think he did a great job. One thing I did touch on in the other one, which I had some people comment and be like, oh, is that really how it works, was the technical area with Arteta. I actually did see there was a clip while the game was running, and it was Tim Robertson, the fourth official, telling Arteta, hey, you got to get back in your technical area. So I thought that was nice to see. It's not only Arteta, but a lot of their coaches walk out, but it was nice to see Tim doing that for that part. Again, yeah, a lot of stuff happened the biggest thing happened in the first half. I guess the second half you could say the penalty, but it was clear cut, obvious. No Arsenal fans or anyone from Arsenal really were opposing that. Just only saw some people opposing the Saliba red card, and that's mainly just because, he's their golden child. He's been the solid rock in that defense for the last few years, and to have him missing in this game, which they were kind of under threat with Bournemouth during the beginning, which I don't think they thought they would have been, and then to be having him gone during their big match against Liverpool this match week 9 is pretty tough to take. But yeah, again, I think the referee crew did an amazing job, and I just want to say congratulations to them for keeping this game very good, very easy, and making the right calls. All right, so now moving on to our Man City versus Wolves game. Actually, there was some stuff with just the referees in general that's actually kind of nice. Not good that it happened, but nice that it happened. We can kind of explain some stuff for you all. And so the one thing was we had our fourth official actually switch over to becoming a assistant referee or one of the linesmen. And that was because one of our assistant referees, Richard West, got an injury either the day before or kind of during the warm-ups, felt an injury, and wasn't able to fulfill the duties as an assistant referee. So our fourth official came in and replaced our assistant referee. And that's kind of how this works. And I'll explain is we have our referee, we have our two assistant referees, and then we have our fourth. And sometimes you don't have a fourth when you're at lower levels, or like in my experience, unless we're at like tournaments when we're roughing youth, or sometimes like high school to even like your adult league type of stuff. And so what kind of takes place is if the referee gets injured or needs to be replaced because of an illness or something like that, normally either our assistant referee one, who is on the side that has the teams, will replace, and if you have a fourth, then your fourth will replace the second. Kind of you shuffle around. If you don't have a fourth and you just have your three referees, your referee and your two ARs, probably what will take place in that situation, if there is not another referee, like if you're at a tournament, sometimes you may be able to get another referee to come in and help support. But if you're not in like this, in a scenario, most likely you'll just have your two ARs reffing the game in a two-man style, which is very different. You don't ever really see that. Actually, never, ever. I don't think I've ever seen that at a professional level. But it can happen sometimes at our youth levels and stuff like that, especially in states that struggle to get referees out and getting a good group of referees. But yeah, so our referee for the Man City Wolves game was Chris Cavanagh. We had ARs Konstantin Hadzidakis. We were supposed to have Richard West as our other assistant referee, but Tom Bramall came in to replace him as he received an injury, Richard West, and Richard West went into our fourth official. Then we had VAR as Strout Atwell, and then our assistant VAR, Mark Perry. And so I have a little bit different this game. I felt like as a fan, the refereeing was alright. As a fan of Man City, and as just a fan in general of the Premier League, it was pretty good. I don't think there was too many calls that I was like, ooh, that's kind of like a dicey call. Nothing like that. I think every call was pretty good in that sense. But as another referee, there was sometimes I was like, ooh, this could be done better. And I felt like Chris kind of wasn't up to his full game. But I will explain kind of, and I'm not saying it was totally his, well, yeah, it wasn't totally his fault. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I understand. I've been in those positions before as well. And you'll probably normally see me talking about some of these same points as games for Man City, or games with teams that just hold possession a lot. And that just makes it really hard on referees in some ways. And I'll explain a bit further later. But let's get into our first half. So, first half, I felt like, again, he was finding the right angles. He was getting into good angles. He was moving around to get the best angle he can to, of seeing the ball and the playing of the field. And yeah, I felt he was pretty invisible until he was needed to. There might have been one or two times he kind of, was maybe trying to like show a presence, but I didn't feel like it was that much. The biggest thing I didn't really like about either might just be his style of reffing or what I was just kind of talking about a little bit before, and kind of just with games of Man City, he seemed to me very flat-footed. And what I mean is like more walking around, more stopped in one place for a long time, more kind of, the saying when the goalkeeper's a tree or rooted to the ground, like, his feet aren't really moving. And so, and it's not a bad thing in general. He was making the right calls. There wasn't any time it was like, oh, um, because he was flat footed, he missed this call, or because he wasn't like moving around, he missed this call. Like sometimes, you just are walking around, and that kind of happens when you are going to probably be reffing this Man City team or teams that hold possession, and that's just because they're just pinging the ball around pass by pass, and there isn't a lot of action, and that doesn't need you to be kind of moving constantly. But I kind of personally like to keep moving, kind of shuffling, kind of moving around. Now it can be small little things, and he did it a bit while walking, but I try not to, personally, myself, I try not to walk as little as I can during the game or while the ball is in play. But, um, it kind of was happening throughout the half. I didn't feel like it was the end of the world, but personally, I think could have done better, especially at this professional level. But again, you're reffing Man City. They hold possession, and that's kind of why I like them as a team. I love the style of football, but it does result into refs walking around, being flat-footed, not moving a lot. First yellow card came during the first half. I think this was a really good call. He was in the right angle, and I'll actually show a photo of it. But personally, I wish he was in like a little bit of a closer position. I don't think his position was bad. He had the right angle, all of that. But I think he could have anticipated that a bit more. And maybe this is where I think his flat-footedness kind of caught him a little bit. Was, to me, he was a little far from the ball when making that call. And it wasn't a bad call. It wasn't anything wrong with it. But I think he could have been closer. And I think he could have anticipated that pass and where that ball was going if he was kind of moving around and going. But he's kind of walking slow. Oh, snap that ball and then go. If he's kind of moving, you kind of going boom, boom, boom. And then you kind of anticipate that pass. And that's kind of what you're trying to do as a referee too, is kind of anticipate those passes so you know where that ball is going. You're ahead of time. You're in the right angle for when that ball gets to those areas. Yeah, I think, there wasn't anything. It was clear foul, yellow card. I thought it was good. Take control of the game early, being like, hey, look, we're not making these fouls. It was right outside the box. I kind of talk about it later on in the second half. It was something I noticed super quick in the first half, but I actually didn't make a comment about it. But in the second half, I noticed it again, and I was like, "Ooh, let me make a comment." And it was more of his positioning when the free kick took place. Now his positioning, like all positioning, is objective. But I think he probably could have been in a better position. But I'll talk about the positioning on like free kicks, corner kicks, and stuff like that. That I saw in the second half more so. I just remember seeing something in the first half, but it was like super quick. I was like, it's not that big. But then when I saw it again and again, I was like, that's kind of interesting. Personally, I would have taken a different position when that free kick's taken or that type of stuff. But again, maybe that was the best position for him, and the type of area he likes to be to see certain calls. In the second half, again, it's actually the top one I have here. The position on free kick, correct. Again, it's decent position. I think I do have an image of the one from the second half. I think if he was positioned left of the ball a bit more, he would have had a bit better of an angle, especially during this one. This one, I think, caught my eye a bit more because he did call and have to talk to some players near the wall and past that 10-yard marker. And so I feel like that's why I probably marked this down in the second half compared to the other one. But I think if he was left of that ball, he could have seen some different angles and definitely maybe had more of like a better view than like seeing direct down towards the wall and maybe seeing some, those ticky tacky pulling of the arms, pulling of the jerseys, kind of those things that players try to get away with in the walls and near each other. And if he was just a little more left of the ball and then at a different angle, maybe he could have seen some stuff in a better way. But maybe he doesn't think that, and he was in the best position he thought in that time frame. Again, pretty flat-footed, kind of just walking around. One thing I did like was he was checking his shoulders, and I talked about that as about Robert Jones during the Arsenal game as well. And that's helpful. I just, again, don't really care for the flat-footedness and the walking around as much. I think it could have helped with better reaction times and, that type of stuff. But he was checking his shoulders. He kind of was doing that type of stuff that helps in those things. Yeah, and then the big thing that took place in this game and kind of what I want to talk about, I don't think it was really a controversial call. It was very interesting. It was hard to understand kind of what was going on. Did he allow the goal? Did he not allow the goal? It was tied 1-1. We're going into the added time of the 90th minute, actually pretty much towards the end of the added time. And Man City scores in the 90th minute +5. So into that fifth extra minute of the game. And it seemed like it was given offsides. And this is hard. I'll explain, and it's hard because the reason they gave offsides, which again it went to VAR and the goal was allowed, and it was determined that offsides wasn't actually the right call, but the idea of the reason why they gave offsides was the correct one. What I was seeing on Twitter, Reddit, social media, all that type of stuff was complaints about how he was offsides that were wrong. And so I kind of want to clear that up during this as well. But yeah, there was the VAR decision to see if Bernardo Silva was in a possible offsides position. Majority of the fans and the people that were upset, of course, going to be Wolves fans. It was tied game, deciding goal at the last minutes of the game for them to lose. And then, Premier League fans, a lot of fans, Man City has been the Premier League champions for multiple years in a row, and just in the last 5 years or so, I think they didn't win it once or something like that. So, very, very interesting on how a lot of fans in the Premier League just don't like Man City, and that's totally fair. You're not going like the other teams. In other sports, I don't really like all the other teams, or like there's no reason why I don't like the Cowboys or the Dodgers. It's just I grew up in I don't like them. Or the regions, type of stuff. But yeah, so what we got here was the possible offsides of Silva, which was called, seems like it was called in-game right away. VAR comes in and he's like, hey, Chris, you need to check this out. We don't think that was the right call in the time being. And the reason why is it's super hard. When your assistant referee throws up that flag, you want to help your assistant referee. Your assistant referees are to help you, and you want to support your assistant referees. So boom, boom, blow the whistle, offsides, disallow the goal. It was super hard on the TV copy. It seemed like they allowed the goal, and then the VAR came in and said no goal, and then again, so super weird. But what I gathered was offsides was given, no goal, and the reason why was Silva was in an offsides position, in the way of the goalkeeper, and being a object, in the visual way, or impeding object. And so, yeah, I'm going to go into how the call was reversed and why it was given as a goal, and then also kind of on the whole offside scenario of what I saw on Twitter and people complaining about that. So, yeah, people complaining on Twitter, being super angry. Bernardo Silva's pretty famous of this, and other players too. But kind of on corner kicks, this is where it all took place. Off a corner kick, Bernardo Silva is in an offside position and impeding with the goalkeeper, not actually pushing or committing a foul against the goalkeeper, but standing in front, getting in his way, kind of making the goalkeeper know that he is there and that type of stuff. And so some people are happy. I think it was Howard Webb. Nope, not Howard Webb. Sorry, Tim Howard. Howard Webb is the main guy for the PGMOL, which is the governing body for all Premier League referees. But Tim Howard is the American goalkeeper that is retired and now a pundit on NBC. And he was talking about how, as a goalkeeper, you're not getting that call with the player in front, that type of stuff. So it was kind of nice to sometimes hear some, former players and stuff like that give their opinion on some of these things. And he's correct. So one thing, a lot of people upset that he's in that position. Well, when a corner kick is taken, you can't be offsides during a corner kick. So Bernardo Silva isn't actually offside, so there was all this complaint of like, when he kind of, there's a little bit of a backing into and getting in the way of Saw, who is the Wolves goalkeeper. And so, but during the corner kick, he's not offside. So there actually isn't that offense. They're just two players kind of fighting for a position, as we call it, or some people call it. And kind of what took place was John Stones, got the header, scored a goal. Then we got an angle, kind of direct on goal, and we can see how this could have been perceived as a red card or an offsides. Bernardo Silva is still in an offsides position once the ball is connecting with John Stones. That's weird, hard to say. His head, and so, he, once that connects with his head, yes, Bernardo Silva is in an offsides position, and could possibly be offsides. But in this scenario, he is not offsides in the fact that he is not in the visual line of the goalkeeper, impeding on the goalkeeper's vision of the ball. The ball actually goes right above Jose Saw's hands and kind of over his head. Now, if the ball went actually a bit further left or right of Saw, the goalkeeper, then we would have the right way to call this offsides, because Bernardo Silva kind of ducks down and moves out of the way towards his right and towards the goalkeeper's right, making sure he wasn't impeding with the goalkeeper in this scenario, which is kind of iffy. He could still be possibly, and I think he was lucky of where the ball went from John Stone's head, but again, he wasn't in the visual line, and he wasn't actually impeding on the goalkeeper in that instance, between the connection of John Stones' header and the ball going towards the back of the net. And so that is why, through VAR decision, and I'll try to pull up some images and things like that. And I know this is kind of said after I probably put them up, but that was a crucial part to why that VAR was reversed and given into a goal. And so this is sometimes why it's super important to let that ball go into the back of the net as well before blowing that whistle. I mean, this was off a corner kick. It was probably close to the 6-yard box. That ball's going at a quick speed and going into the back of the net. But sometimes even assistant referees, now you see them kind of waiting a bit before they throw the flag up, because they don't want to make the mistake of calling that offsides before the ball goes into the back of the net or crosses the goal line, because then what the decision becomes to give the ball back to Man City is very difficult to figure out and understand. And luckily in this situation it wasn't. It's easy goal, restart the game, which didn't restart for much longer. But yeah, that was kind of the big thing I saw during the second half, well, end of the game, and during this game. I think VAR did a great job again in this scenario. It was kind of quick and being like, hey, no, go look at this. We think you guys screwed up a little bit calling that offsides. We think this is a goal. Go look at it. Quick look at it. Maybe a little longer. So it kind of kept those thoughts going. But it was pretty quick, simple, and being like, okay, no, that was a goal. So yeah, great job from Chris and his crew. Again, I think if I ever am watching another Kevin Hall's game, I would like to hopefully see that he is less flat-footed, kind of moving around more. But it could have just been the game. I don't like reffing games that are slow-paced like this with possession and stuff like that. As a fan, I love the tactics and I love how the game is played. But as a referee, I don't like it because it kind of slows you down, and sometimes you might be on your back foot in that scenario. And I sometimes like the games where it's kind of back and forth. You're moving around a bunch. You're getting around that field. You're not in some of the same areas because they're just pinging the ball around from side to side, or in short spaces in the triangles, which is amazing football, I think, but to watch. But as a referee, I don't really like being in those games because sometimes it makes it harder to referee. Just you kind of feel on your back foot and certain things. And I kind of like moving around and being like, okay, this is a fast-paced game, but sometimes those make it feel slower in some ways. But yeah, again, hopefully Chris less flat-footed. I liked what they did during this game, and yeah, I give them praise for that. Hopefully you really enjoyed that referee analysis of the Man City versus Wolves game, and also the Arsenal versus Bournemouth game. Next week, during match week 9, I'll be reviewing again Man City versus Southampton, which will be taking place on Saturday, October 26th, as I'm reviewing all Man City games. And then the primetime game that I'll be reviewing is Arsenal versus Liverpool on Sunday, October 27th. And yeah, it seems like I'm doing a lot of Arsenal review right now, but you know, when you got two big top 6 teams playing in prime time, it's going to be a high volume eyeball game where there's a lot of eyes on that game, and so I think it'll be really important to seeing how the referee takes on that challenge of a high level game. I believe all the referees will do a great job, and yeah, right now I'll post that up as the referees were announced, and so here's the Man City versus Southampton game with the referees there, and then here's the Arsenal versus Liverpool game with the referees, which I believe is Anthony Taylor, who is pretty famous referee. That's one that most people probably know. So it'll be fun reviewing these referees and their crews, and I'll dive into those next week. Well, hello everyone for tuning in to this episode of Pauhana Referee. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and please subscribe.